It's always great to hear your voice. And I wanted to, the announcement that came out today by Baylor that they were going to honor the 74 team, the Miracle on the Brazos, the Southwest Conference title. And the very first thing I thought about, well, besides that's fantastic, 50 years ago, is also just to get a quick reaction from you on what that means to you and what you think it means to the team that did that.
Well, I thank you, Smoke. You're one of my favorites. I think you know that. And for you to write about this amazing story is very pleasing to me. So I'm here available. Answer any questions you've got.
It would be, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just going to say it's an open door. You just ask it and I'll answer it.
So besides the win and besides what that year meant, is there anything else that stands out about that team besides 100 things that maybe has never been told or something you would like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that was sort of interesting is that it became, through the media, the Miracle on the Brazos. And we, as a coaching staff and a football team, and those that were involved with the team, never thought of it as a miracle, but that was the catchy thing for the media, and that's sort of how it went down. But it was planned, it was developed, it was executed by a coaching staff and a football team that took on the moniker that sort of went nationwide, is that they believed that they could beat Texas. And then they did it. But in order to do it, they had to have the proper plan and execute that plan. And so, it seems simple when you talk about it and everybody say, oh, well, it was a big miracle. Well, it was a planned miracle, if you want to put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't easy. That year started out, you played number one OU. That's the team when Switzer had those great teams at OU. He had a bunch of them.
Yep.
Missouri, you lost on the road at Missouri, so you had back-to-back. Then you beat Oklahoma State, won at Florida State in that memorable finish, won at Arkansas. So you gained some momentum, lost it to A&M. But that's just looking at the name. Eventually Texas and Texas Tech also ranked. Looking at that schedule in itself was amazing, or is amazing.
Yes, it was a road killer is what it was. And but we survived it and came out of it with a lot of confidence. And also that was, I think, very important as we went into the conference. And when we played University of Texas, that particular football team had no fear. They had been up against some of the best in the nation. They knew that they could compete and win against the top people. So it was, I never resented the Miracle on the Brazos, because I understood that it was a miracle to most people, the high percentage of the people. So I never resented that, but it was a planned and an executed plan by a group of young men that believed that they could do it. And there's been a lot said and made about the concept of I believe, which I wrote a book about it. But that was the real key, to tell you the truth, because Texas had been dominant over the years. And here comes Baylor, who had been the bottom of everything, now comes up against the top team in the conference and played like they believed they could win, and then they did win.
Why that team? Why did you mentioned it was planned, and we mentioned the schedule was just brutal. I mean, it kind of opens up your eyes. You never dodged people. You played anybody, anywhere, pretty much any time. Kind of during that time, the tough.
That was kind of the swagger we had. Line them up, we'll play them.
and you did.
And it was very good for our football team because we had been against some really good football teams, and of course Texas was the best in our league. And so coming into that, our football team and our coaching staff had no fear at all because we had competed against really good football teams. We had showed that we could win, and why not against the University of Texas? And so that's how we went into the game, with the mentality that, hey, this is just a game that's in our conference, and we're as good or better than they are, and we'll have to prove it on the football field. And we did.
24-7 at halftime. What changed?
Well, Smoke, that's, I think, the question that most football folks want to know all the time. What changed? Well, okay. Yeah. Well, Donnell just mentioned Neil Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Neil was stuttering quarterback that certainly wasn't a national known or ranked guy, became a quarterback, but he had one of the most important aspects of human relations. And that was he was an humble executor. He quietly would go into a game or into a huddle. He exuded confidence, and then he performed it. And he was kind of an unlikely type kid to do that, in the sense that he wasn't fast, he wasn't strong, he wasn't that big, and he was a winner. That's the big thing. He was a winner and suited that.
And he scored the first touchdown to kind of start this comeback in that third quarter.
Yes, he did. Yeah, and it was a game when you sit back and look at it, it was a classic game of supposed. We never thought of ourselves as underdogs, but the media did. And so here's the classic case of an underdog rising to the occasion and successfully executing a plan that had been devised, worked on, and actually worked when we put it into effect. And so it was one of those really amazing things to be a part of. And people still talk about it. People that were there, people that said they were there, talk about it all the time. So it was a great game, and a very important game for our program and where we were trying to take Baylor at the time.
You beat a team with Earl Campbell, Roosevelt Leaks, Raymond Claiborne, and others who were on it. And because Texas was always loaded, and yet you were able to beat a team with guys who are now in the College Football Hall of Fame. And we know what Earl is. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, that's the truth. And of course, that's what, people, it was given the title of the Miracle on the Brazos. And the miracle part of it was that we were not supposed to win, and we did. So that's what the miracle was all about. But that didn't really aptly describe what took place because, they had the blue chip players and we didn't. And they had the history of success and we didn't. But on that particular day and that particular game, we were the best team on the field.
So You're not supposed to win, all of that. And Texas, of course, we know their history. You ended up beating them more than just that game. There was the Worm. There was the 1980 team. There were other teams. And like I said, you played anybody, all of the big boys, and you played them head up and won some of those games too.
Yeah, well, that was my philosophy, Smoke, is that I wanted to compete against the best, because to do that, you have to become the best and believe that you can be the best and beat those teams. So we just took them on. I mean, you go back and look at the schedules that we played on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't get many of those folks at home. We had to travel, and but we wanted to play them, and it made us better. It made us a better team. And if we didn't get all beat up, that was the big key. That's why people don't know a lot about this, but I was also a track coach in my college career, so I knew how to train people for conditioning and running. And so we were probably, Smoke, one of the best conditioned teams through 4 quarters in any game of any team in the country. And that was a little thing that nobody really thought about or knew about. But our kids took great pride in the fact that they knew what they had to give in the 4th quarter.
Coach Teaff, the Hall of Famer Grant Teaff, and without question, the number one first ever guest we ever had on this show when we began it back in April of 2020, and we've sat down so many times and looked back at the history. Just a couple of more things, Coach, and thank you as always for your time. What did that win actually in the end mean to Baylor?
Well, I think the big thing that it meant to the Baylor and Baylor people is that we could play the best in our conference toe-to-toe, and we could win. And they knew we did it the right way, and we brought in youngsters that maybe Texas did not take because somebody was better than they were. But through our development program, by the time those guys were ready to play, they honestly were as good as anybody. And it just surprised so many people, but it was no surprise to us, and it certainly wasn't a surprise to our team that they could line up against anybody and win.
All right, so how much did that help? Because you were a great recruiter to get players to come to Baylor. We know all the stories. When you had basically no facilities. You had the stadium that was well off of campus. We know about the locker room that was basically like a closet. J.J. Joe was discussing that the other day, was underneath the stands. That didn't change the facilities immediately by no means, but what did it mean when you picked up the phone or go to visit a school, to go visit a prospect, at least that particular win and also winning the Southwest Conference?
Well, it was huge, as you can imagine, Smoke, because people love winners. And not only do the players, but the parents and the aunts and the uncles gravitate to that area. So that's what made the difference for us, is that we were able to win, back up what we believed and what we talked about. And then that made it very, very easy for us to recruit, although at the time we didn't have the equal facilities to Texas and other schools that we were competing against. But we had that one thing that young people were looking for, was a place where they could come and be the best they could be and be a part of a winning program. And that's still true today. Anybody out there that's coaching at any school, if you can establish that, then you can grow a program that competes.
You had a great staff and continued with guys that had won elsewhere, and we know about when they even left Baylor or when you were no longer the coach and how successful some of them were and legendary. What was it about you? Coaches can tell, looking at a player, whether they're in T-shirts and a short or on film or in person at a game, if they have that in them. Yet you weren't going to always get the dudes, at least the blue chips. But you cultivated, you developed the talent. Is that just something that is just like an instinct you've had inside of your eyes and brain?
You know, you hit on something that few people have really thought about. But see, my background coming in from the small schools where we didn't have the money, we didn't have the facilities. So how do you go about recruiting the kind of individuals that can become winners in that circumstance? And so that's what's my background, is that I knew how, coming into a place like Baylor, I knew how to recruit and how to select youngsters that are going to be totally different 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are what they are at this point, but what are they going to be 3 years from now? That, if you boiled it down, I think that was a major key to our success, plus having some really good coaches that knew what they were doing, was that we could project a youngster out of high school basically what he would be 3 or 4 years from now. And a lot of schools went for the top blue chippers at the time. And interestingly enough, some of them were peaked out. You know, they never got any better. They stayed where they were, which was good, but they never really developed. And so we selected youngsters that 4 years from now, they're going to be totally different physically, mentally, and even spiritually.
What is it like to watch as you do your children, grandchildren, or others? What is it like as a coach to see that they have that potential and then they meet it? Is that like the ultimate, like your heart warms up watching a young athlete become or reach their potential?
Absolutely. And here's another thing, Smoke, that people don't realize is that when you start with a youngster, you can see potentially what he's going to be. He may not can see that, or he may be overestimating what he can be. Sometimes they do that. But to be able to see that and figure a way to develop talent, that skill, attitude, that determination, that belief, if you will, that they can do in that team, they can beat anybody. And that was a real key to what we were able to do. We recruited youngsters that had potential for development. At the time, Baylor couldn't go out and get a so-called blue chipper, but we took guys that in 4 years could beat the blue chipper.
All right, so they're going to honor the team, the memory, the team, the players, coaching staff, anyone attached to that team 50 years ago in November, but they're going to honor the team in September before, or the weekend that they're playing the Air Force Academy, which to me is really, really cool that they're going to be in town for that game. What is that?
Hey,
what?
Man,
yeah. And you had a great relationship back in the day with Fisher DeBerry, among others that were a part of the U.S. Air Force football program. But
absolutely,
what does this mean to you? 50 years ago, and here you are, and they're going to honor the fact that it's the 50th anniversary.
Wow. You know, I hadn't thought that much about it, but you're bringing back some lumps in my throat to see those youngsters develop from where they were to be able to win on that football field, do it with integrity, a great amount of pride, and effort. One of the things that we really based everything on was an individual, thus the team, giving total effort to everything they attempted to do. And we asked for that not only on the football field, but in the classroom and in their behavior out of the classroom. And so, it was a combination of things that made our team what they were. They became very close. They believed in each other. They believed in their coaching. And when we said Sic'Em, they sicked them.
Oh, you did. And you did throughout your career. I'm glad I asked you that question. I love the reaction, the emotions from you. That it's time to honor that team because of the calendar, because of the 50 years, and there's the 20 years and 30 years and 40 to 50 years, and here you are being able to talk about it again. And
honestly, it is just hard to think about and believe.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to games when I was a young coach, and they were honoring a team that had been, successful or something. And it's just a great thing for me, for Donnell and our girls and the coaching staffs and their families to see the team honored and recognized these 50 years later because, Smoke, they really were.
Yeah, they earned it. They deserved it. And it's a memory that Baylor fans will always remember. And, of course, you giving me the time as you've done so many times. You've always given me the time. But, my God, I love talking to you. And I love going down the trips of memory lane and also seeing how you're doing. And thank you so much for your time and in sharing those memories and some of the moments that led to that miracle on the Brazos and the win that you said, as you said, was planned to beat Texas that led to a Southwest Conference championship.
That's right. Well, we love you, Smoke, and appreciate the great job you do. And I'm at your beck and call and always have been.
Thank you so much, Coach. We love you. I love you. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye now.
That's the great, the legend, Grant Teaff. Baylor will honor the 1974 Southwest Conference championship team in September before the weekend that they host the U.S. Air Force Academy coming to town in September at McLean Stadium. This is, 365 Sports.